when you see eyes light up, when you see smiles on people's faces, when you see people putting down their forks and knives during a dinner to listen, there's nothing more empowering than that. You are the high-flying CEO, you are the corporate leader, you have done a lot and you earned that stage, but now go sit in the audience. Sit at the back of the room. When you're waiting to be introduced to speak, mingle amongst the crowd. Get the feeling of where they're at, and it'll just lend a little bit of perspective to you that you're not just there to present your story, you're there to connect with them. You have the right, you've been given the stage, you've been given the mic. If you have a message to share, do it well and do it properly, because it can have a major impact. It can have a major impact as far as sales and business. It can have a major impact as far as people. I want to build you to a place where you want to succeed.
Masterful Leaders for men building business, family, and self. Hosted by Shimshon Meir Frankel.
Our guest today is Alex Holzer, a global communication coach, presentation strategist, and the founder of GYV. With over 20 years of experience training, coaching, and speaking across the globe, Alex specializes in a critical executive skill, conquering stage fright and commanding elite spaces. Operating from Melbourne, Australia, he acts as the quiet force behind top-tier corporate advisors and managing directors, helping them translate intense performance anxiety into absolute conviction, clarity, and vocal authority during high-stakes presentations. Alex is an operator who approaches public speaking not through superficial performance gimmicks, but through rigorous behavioral design and ruthless audience planning. He's here to show us how to dismantle the physiological blocks that freeze leaders under pressure, how to engineer a message that commands a room, and how to project a grounded, intentional presence that wins both inside the boardroom and at home. Alex, welcome to Masterful Leaders.
Thank you for that beautiful and warm introduction.
Alex, your clients include top corporate advisors and managing directors who rely on you to help them structure content and command an audience. In your recent writing, you pointed out that effective communication is not built on quick fixes, but on total conviction in your message and ruthless planning for the audience experience. For a business leader trying to win a high-stakes pitch, close a major capital partner, or rally an entire organization, how do they shift their focus away from their own self-perception and engineer a delivery strategy that ensures their message actually lands with maximum ROI?
Okay, so I think you're starting to define the answer there already towards the end of your question. An issue that a lot of business people have, doesn't matter whether you're the guy on the street selling icicles or you're a CEO of a major tech company selling the next gadget or AI initiative to the world. The issue often is that you're stuck in your own world and your head is in your own expertise and your own product, which is, to a certain extent, that's why you got there. It's because the person had the brains and had the vision and had the drive to create something, come up with a product, come up with a service that the world didn't have, and they're brilliant. And that's why we need them. But when you're starting to sell it to an audience, it's an entirely different story. Then you've got to step away from yourself and you've got to look purely at the audience. You've got to look at what are they missing, what do they need to hear, how do they need to hear it. So a visionary who's created a product will be extremely proud of their product from a very technical perspective. What sort of design limitations they had to work within to come up with this new design that solved all the problems. The end user doesn't know anything about that. The end user just knows the convenience. So you've got to shift your story to them and then start bringing in your own information and your own knowledge wherever it fits within the framework of the audience's mindset. So I often say to people that if you want to be a good speaker, you've got to leave some of yourself sitting in the audience. You'll come to check out the venue beforehand. That's a classic tip that is really important. Check out the venue, get to know what's going on, where you'll be speaking, where they will be, because there could be issues, and there have been. But when you do that, I would also say to you, sit in the middle of the crowd somewhere, in the empty auditorium, sit down there and just feel what it's like on the other side of the room. Get a feel for that space and start to experience it. And then when you step up on stage, you'll start to see things differently. I'll give you the reverse example. I'll do this often when doing a workshop within a school. I'll pick students to come to the front of the room to have to present to the class or group of classes, whatever we've got whatever workshop we're doing. And so I had 3 students sitting up the front. We were working on 3 different approaches to communication. We had one scenario, and each one of them had to approach it from a different angle. And the third one, who was to do it from a humorous angle, was fantastic. And he had the whole place in stitches. And I said, okay, get up off your chair, please. He was sitting at the front of the room facing the audience. Get up off your chair, please, and come to stand where I'm standing behind the teacher's desk. And would you like to say it from here? And he froze. Sitting in his chair, he was comfortable, but to get up there, it's just stepping 1 meter across, was going into a new zone. He was going into a place where he felt there was something expected of him. He couldn't step up onto that stage. So I say this in the reverse. You are the high-flying CEO. You are the corporate leader. You have done a lot and you earned that stage. But now go sit in the audience. Sit at the back of the room. When you're waiting to be introduced to speak, mingle amongst the crowd. Get the feeling of where they're at, and it'll just lend a little bit of perspective to you that you're not just there to present your story. You're there to connect with them. You're there to give a message over that they should be able to absorb and take it home. So start to feel what they're feeling and then dig deep within your store of information that you've got and put that into their receptacle the way they're able to receive it.
So in a sense, you're really saying what many people say about entering the other person's space, to step into their shoes. You're even physically, you're saying, go sit out in the audience.
I think
See
that
what it's
helps
like
a lot.
for them to be sitting there, receiving from whoever's on stage, or whoever's is in front of the room, what it is they're presenting.
You need to, you really need to change your perspective. I mean, I had recently, it was a slightly tricky one. I just got back from overseas this week, and I spoke at an event there. Now I arrived in this country barely 2 days before the event, and it was a major speech. I didn't really know the audience. I had a feeling, and I rang a lot of people beforehand and tried to do whatever I could do to really get a good feel for the people. But at the end of the day, I prepared a speech based on assumptions. I didn't really know the crowd to a T, and I did whatever I could. And before I got up to speak, I had a little bit of leeway in where I could speak from within the hall and the way things were set up. And I went and I spoke to the sound and lighting people, I spoke to the event planners, and I spoke to the hosts, and I decided to change things up because I felt that would work with me and the audience in a better way. The other speakers that night didn't speak from the same spot that I spoke from. They were presenting differently. But for myself, I needed to just take 5-10 minutes to just work out what's going on, what are the people like, how do I want to connect with them. At the end of the day, they loved it, but it was an important part for me to really get a good feel for the room and know who am I actually addressing, who do I want to make eye contact with, which parts of the audience I want to make sure that they're not isolated and feel that we have a strong connection between myself and the entire room and I can pull them in together. That was very important to me.
Public speaking, in your description, is so much different than like a theatrical production. In a theater, people show up, they've already paid the money. They know probably what seats they've purchased. They know what kind of angle they're going to get. It's upon the audience themselves to have that willing suspension of disbelief, to sort of relax and allow what happens on the stage to happen. But in the form that you're describing, people come, they have no willing suspension of disbelief. Right? Everyone is being judged. And whoever gets in front of the room, they're not relaxed about. They're already trying to sum them up and judge them, or maybe compare themselves to the person who stood up in front of the room. It's a completely different animal, completely different environment.
Yeah, and it's all happening in real time.
No practicing.
Well, I mean, yeah, you do have to work yourself up beforehand, and I will coach my clients as much as I can to a certain extent ignore whatever they think is going on in the audience's mind. But the bottom line is, when you see eyes light up, when you see smiles on people's faces, when you see people putting down their forks and knives during a dinner to listen, there's nothing more empowering than that. When you see eyes light up, when you see smiles on people's faces, when you see people putting down their forks and knives during a dinner to listen, there's nothing more empowering than that. And in this case, a day or two later, I met up with some people who had been at this function, and there was a young kid, no more than 11 or 12, who was running past, and he's like, "Hey, you're the guy who spoke the other night. I never listened to a speech at an event, but I listened to you." And I was like, "Hey, that's sweet. That's very nice. Now tell me, what do you remember that I said?" And he told me 2 things off the cuff, straight off, and I was like, wow. It's not that we need the validation from 11-year-olds, but to say that a speech that was geared to adults caught his attention, and he listened, and he was actually able to pick up on the nuance that I was trying to give over, or the way I did something and it made an impression, this is a very, very powerful medium. This is something that shouldn't be taken as just, I'll just speak, I'll just speak, I'll just go, I'll just come. You have the right, you've been given the stage, you've been given the mic. If you have a message to share, do it well and do it properly, because it can have a major impact. It can have a major impact as far as sales and business. It can have a major impact as far as people. That young kid hopefully learned something that will stay with him. He stood there open-eyed, he listened for the first time, and he found a certain sensitivity in the way this guy spoke, the way he dealt with certain angles. I hope that stays with him. I picked that up of other people. That's all I've learned from. And and if I could impart something that's going to make him a better person, that's fantastic. But it just shows you the power of what this medium is all about, and that people really need to, although we all speak all the time, that's what we do. We speak, that's how we interact all the time. We're always communicating. But you know what? We're always walking, we're always running. But if you want to do it properly, you got to go to a trainer. And you got to go to a physio to get yourself some good technique. Otherwise, your muscles, your joints, everything's going to hurt. You got to do it properly. We all talk, we all speak all the time, we all communicate. But if you want to do it well and you want to do it powerfully, go get yourself a coach. Learn a bit. It can really, really make a difference.
Let's talk a little bit about family and leadership on the home front. You teach that a true speaker must answer the internal question of what are they doing up on stage. If a leader has a clear intellectual justification for their mission, they can immediately control the room. This concept of owning your presence is just as vital when you step off the corporate stage and walk through your own front door. How can a provider apply that same level of intentionality, clear boundary setting, and verbal clarity to lead their family effectively, ensuring their children and spouse feel a grounded, secure presence rather than a distracted executive?
It's a hard one. Just stepping back onto the stage for a moment, being able to answer that voice and tell yourself, I know exactly why I'm here. I have a mission and I have a message to share and I have an audience who need to hear that message. I believe that empowers a person and makes them actually want to do it. Instead of somebody preparing a speech and saying, you know what, I hate this, but my boss made me do it. I hate it, but I'm the father of the bride, so I have to speak. I'm so proud for my daughter, but I hate it. I'm going to have to get up and do it. If only I could get away with not doing it, I'd be the happiest man on earth. I don't want that if only bit. I want you to believe in what you're doing. And when you believe in it, you have a sense of mission and purpose, and you actually want to carry it out and you want to be successful. So you're not just gritting your teeth and getting through, you're actually growing into the role and you want to make sure that it lands. That's really where the drive or the passion comes from. Stepping off stage and coming home, the difficulty is in changing hats. That's very tricky. I can be out there, lecturing to 1,000 people in a ballroom, but when I step off stage and I go home with my wife, I can't be lecturing anymore. My role in the conversation suddenly changes from being, where 99% of the presentation is coming from me and barely 1% from the audience. We're now down to a 50-50 or a 60-40, whatever it is. Now she's been quiet in the room for so long, she's got what to share and I need to be quiet and listen. I think you're hitting on an important point, but having clarity about what your role is at the time, and your role shifts. Then coming home and facing the kids, the role shifts again. If they're older children, if they're younger children, and what time of day, and if they're on vacation times, the role shifts. And it's not the fact that I could say such a great piece out there in public, and now can you repeat it at the table, at dinner table, at home? The kids don't need to hear that. But maybe in a conversational setting, something can slip in. Depends how, it depends how it runs. You got to know your role, and knowing your role will allow you. You can't come home with notes, with a script and say, you know what, I'm going to tell the family the following today. It doesn't work. Maybe for some people it does. I don't know. I couldn't do that. We can be sitting, we can be playing, we can be work on the connection and have the conversation flowing. Things can slip in. And I'll often find that a lot of thoughts that I have that get shared on stage have come from conversations with my kids. An idea has been teased out over there. I've tried to share a message with them, and of course they'll challenge me and they'll push back. And I'll be like, hey, I didn't think of things that way. And it'll percolate in my mind for a while until I come out with something that I can share on stage, but it's actually come from the children in a very different setting, in a different way. But again, there's going to be clarity on what you're sharing and clarity on who you're sharing it with. What's your role at that time? Your role is not to be a speaker there. So then you got to drop back to conversation. But then again, your role is you are parent, you are the senior one. You do have knowledge that they don't have. So you got to find the right way of getting that across.
I really appreciate that. I'm also big into roles, even to the point where I have to think to myself, like, who am I supposed to be for this person right now? And that applies to all environments and all types of people. And with my clients, if we've accomplished something over, say, a month, I might even ask them, who do you need me to be for you right now going forward?
That's a powerful question. As you say, especially when a client has come through a process and they're not that entry level person with whatever limitations and fears. They've grown and you've given them skills and strategies. The relationship can shift. Now, I appreciate that with some of my clients. They'll come back to me 6 months or 12 months later and say, look, I'm speaking in a different setting. We've worked on my presentation. It's all good. But because of this different setting, I'm concerned about specifically this issue. They're coming at an advanced level now. I've been through the work. I know what I do. But because I'm shifting areas, I want to work on one specific point to get that right, because that's what my concern is over here. And like you say, that's where my role is very different to what it was 12 months ago with that same client.
And the delivery will be different based on your position.
Yeah.
You've spent over 20 years helping leaders conquer sweaty palms, short breath, and total brain freeze. You advocate that stage fright is frequently triggered by deep social and performance anxiety, including common hang-ups like worrying about a foreign accent or pronunciation. When an operator is experiencing that intense physiological adrenaline spike right before a massive presentation or a high friction board meeting, what are the tactical, immediate internal adjustments they can make to steady their nervous system, suppress the cortisol and reclaim total cognitive control?
Look, the classic fallback is to stop and breathe and just slow yourself down. But, that only works when you can fall back to a solid base. You have a solid base and something's running out of control, slow it down and go back to default. The problem is if you don't have a default. That's where slowing down and relax and calm down, it doesn't help because there's nothing to revert back to. So my coaching really works on principles. I want to make sure that you are somebody who's equipped to handle this from the beginning. And like we spoke about earlier, I want to build you to a place where you want to succeed. You want to get up there and, as we say, gain your voice. I want you to be there speaking up, sharing what you got to share, and believe in it. Not do it because anyone's pushing you to do it. But do it. It might be a bit of a push because, it's confronting, but it's a mission that you want to do. When you're in that space, and that takes a lot of work beforehand. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work in understanding who you are, the setting, the audience, the message, all the different pieces of the puzzle to make sure that you are that one person on that stage to say what needs to be said right now. When all of that comes together and you believe in it, then you can say, you know what, I know I'm nervous, but I'm going to do it because I believe in it. And that's when noticing that 3 minutes in, the audience are calm, noticing that they're listening to what you're saying, that they're responding, starts to really settle you and give you the confidence to really get into it and shift into second gear and start really delivering with purpose. The nerves are there, the nerves are real, there's nothing wrong with that. If somebody is apathetic, that's no good. It means they don't take the situation seriously. I always like to say that the star athletes, the number one seeded players, want to play in front of the biggest stage, in front of the biggest crowds. They want it. Now there's huge pressure there, but they know that their game is up for it. And when they feel that pressure, they raise their game to the next level and they thrive off it. Now, it took time to get themselves to that stage. Don't worry, they've been working over a lifetime to get to the top of their game. But they don't want to be playing on the outside courts. They want to be playing in front of the world, in front of the TV cameras, and be on the front page afterwards. But they're going to push and they're going to fight and they're going to raise themselves to that level. With sweaty palms, they're going to lose sleep the night before. Of course they will. But they take it seriously and they rise to the occasion. It's no different here. It is a performance. It is a sport. It is something you got to really work on. But I don't want those nerves to be debilitating. I don't want those nerves to throw you off. I want you to look at those nerves and say, you know what? It's a big occasion, but I'm here for the game. I'm well equipped. I've trained, I've prepared, and I'm the man for this game. And I'm going to step onto that stage. I got to focus. I got to be at the top of my game, and I got to do this properly. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it on, and I'm going to fight it, and I'm going to do it because I'm up for it. I've got the skills. I've prepared. I am the person for this job. There's no one else here who can do what I can do today. That gives you the confidence. If I go back to my speech last week, I flew in for that event. I was asked to speak there specifically by key people in the room. Could somebody else have gotten up and given a nice MC speech, welcome, thank you? Yes, they could have. But what I was able to offer from my angle, nobody could do. The fact that on the night I was a little hoarse and I was a little exhausted and jet lagged didn't make a difference. I knew beforehand, you know what? My voice might not ring as clearly tonight. I might struggle a bit. I might have to speak a bit softer, use the microphone more, not strain my throat. I knew that. But so what? My message is going to be just as powerful, right? The performance and delivery might not be as perfect as I would like, but the message is going to cut through, and that's going to be fantastic, because there's something about this room and this audience and these people, and there's a message and an angle that only I can deliver. That's why I'm the man for the job. And so what if I'm in a foreign country? So what if I'm in a foreign audience and they're looking at me funny while I'm stepping around on stage without talking into the microphone and waiting? It doesn't bother me at all, because I know I've got a job to do. And just let me start when I'm ready to start, and I'll take you on the journey. But let me just get everything right and we'll be good. It comes really from a sense of mission. And that's where the hardest work is at the beginning, to really get clear why you are the one speaking at that event. Why you, what's your message, what is special, what's unique that you can bring to the table that no one else can. And when you start to believe in that, then you start to live it, and you start to say, okay, that's my mission and my role that no one else can share. I'm going to do this.
It sounds like you're saying, in order to show up 100%, to be fully present, we need time, the space, and the person. I'm the person, the only person right now who can share what I have to say in this space right now. No one else. And your example of going overseas, being given this opportunity to speak in front of everyone, no one else could have been that person.
Yeah.
How long does it take for someone to build that mission, to inculcate it inside of themselves, or to find it inside of them? It's always been there.
Yeah, it depends what it is. It depends. If it's a business, if you're selling your product, if you're selling your services, if you're trying to get ahead and put food on the table for your family, for some people that's a huge driver, and for other people they're very self-conscious. You'll have people who are speakers because they've had a life experience. I had a client recently. She told me about how she must speak in public, and she's got events booked and lined up because of a certain situation that she was in, and therefore she's got a message to share that she really, really passionately believes in. And she's pretty much putting her career on hold to do this sort of community work instead. But sleepless nights and anxiety and the fear, and we're sitting on a Zoom call. She's sitting in her room at home, and I can see the poor woman is stressed out. And I had to stop in the middle. I'm like, this is scary. I really feel for her, and I don't want her to look like that. There's no reason. But as we spoke, she had a really, really strong belief in what she was sharing. It had to do with a life experience that she'd gone through, and therefore she had this message to share. But she believed that a specific angle that she can bring to the story that other people involved couldn't, and she believed that that message had to be heard. The more she shared that, I'm hearing somebody who really believes in what they're doing. So, she's got that. She just had to shift the mindset a little bit, and suddenly we took a few different events that she was going to speak at, and she's like, no, I would rather approach this event from this angle and not from that angle, because that aligns more with the message that I want to share. I was like, fantastic. Now you're owning your story. Now you're coming into your own. You're believing in what you're doing. You know why you're doing it, and you're going to tell the people, thank you for having me. I will come and I will speak, but I will speak within the following parameters, because that's what I want to share. I'm not just here to discuss whatever you want to discuss that's somewhat related to my story. I have a set mission that I'm here for. So some people need to create that, and some people have lived through that. And then there's people who maybe have something, but it's taken them time to develop and to figure that out. I mean, for myself, public speaking has been a part of me since I was a kid in school. I'd always be the class spokesman for different things. If we do a production, the class would be very happy to let me introduce and spread the story and set the scene. Well, there were other kids who would be on stage being the clown or whatever else they were doing. Each one had their role. Painting the picture and setting the scene was my role. I was very happy to do that. And it stayed with me throughout life. But it wasn't always my career. I was helping people. I was coaching people on the side. For me to be able to say, hold on, there's a package here. There are skills. There's something here which is actually can change people's careers and lives, and I can structure that in a way to share that with people. It's not just the knowledge that I have and a feel and experience and People know that about me. I can actually formulate it in a way. Took work for me to do as well. To change that into a series and a set lessons and skills and an approach to share with people. Yeah, it was a passion, it was a mission, but it needed to go through a process to be built out. So people are at different stages, but then again, they still need to give it a lot of work. And I'll do it to myself a lot. I'll be 3/4 of the way through preparing a speech and I've got it all together and I'll stop and I'll be like, what exactly is my role on that night? I know they've asked me to speak because they think I'm a good speaker and I've got what to share and I've got a good message to share. But am I actually fulfilling a specific role for me that night? Or am I just doing something generic? And I'll go back and I'll challenge myself with the steps that I put my clients through and I'll do that to myself. I know I can carry it off, but is that really what I'm meant to be doing there? Or should I be doing something else? And then I could totally change the event and change the audience and things will be different. So it's something to keep revisiting, and occasionally in the last minute things will change. Something happens on the day, something happens when the event is changed. Somebody else who was a keynote speaker can't attend, or some other technical issues, and suddenly, the whole order of events on the evening change. Then maybe your role changes as well. So the more you're going back to basics and you're building it from key structural perspective and not just from a script, you're able to move and play with that. You're able to allow your speech to be something dynamic. At the time of the event, if you feel something has to be changed, you've got the confidence to change it because you're in control of the structure. You're not restricted by a script that I must follow, but rather I created that script. And if I really feel that something changed tonight, I can ad-lib and I can make changes because I know exactly where everything fits in. I want you to be that tradesman who's got control of their tools, who's able to make those changes. I want you to really be in control of what you're doing. That's really the dream.
As an audience member, when I leave the building, what is it that I usually take away with me? What is it that I remember from that speech?
What do I want you to walk away with?
What do I normally, as scientifically, what does an audience member usually walk away with?
So I think usually when somebody is a great speaker, meaning that let's just say they've got great delivery skills and they captivate the room. They're energetic. They're one of those people who really owns the stage. People can walk away and say, you know what, he was fantastic. It was awesome. I'll pay money to go to that event with him as a keynote. It was fantastic. There might be a great story, a great punchline, a great joke, something that they're going to talk about on the way home. I want to know if tomorrow or the next day they meet their friends for coffee, when everything is calmed down, and they say, hey, I was at that dinner the other night. Yeah, that keynote, very good. What did the guys say? What are they going to share with them? And that's where I'll work with my clients, that I want that 48 hours later in the coffee shop, I want the audience to be able to share with their friend in a nutshell exactly what you said. I want your entire presentation. It doesn't matter if it's a 3-minute or a 3-hour presentation. It makes no difference. The entire thing has to be built around one simple line. And every piece of what you say comes back and builds a piece of that one line. So they can share with their friend, yes, he spoke about believing in your message and wanting to actually deliver that message on stage and not let anxiety get in the way. That's what he spoke about. Now, if I shared 15 stories along the way, hopefully those stories all brought out this point to a certain extent. So if somebody, yes, they remembered that story because it was emotional, because it was humorous, because it was whatever, but when they say over that story, the story wasn't there for entertainment. The story was there to bring home a message. And it was prepared and packaged in that way. So when they say, you know what, he had a cute story about someone, you just reminded me of therefore you told me, and they say the story, they'll be able to not just say the story, but say the punchline to the story as well. Get the message and the lesson from the story. So that's the big question that I want from my clients is think about the audience. So what we started with, think about that audience and what are that audience going to go home with? You're giving them a message. Don't just wow them and entertain them. Put a message that's come from your brain and you've used a wonderful medium to share it and let it go into their brain. Then when they walk away, it's there, it's planted. That's what you really want to do. You want to really connect with them and have them be able to share with somebody what you said afterwards. Not just the entertainment factor, but to be able to actually share what your message was. Preparing it in that way, it's a totally different way of preparing a script. It's a totally different way of preparing for your presentation. You're thinking totally about the person walking out, going home, hailing a cab, going on the subway, and wherever they are, and that message is still with them. It's in their head the whole way through. It's a totally different way of preparing.
48 hours later, in the coffee shop, and you can't help but tell your friend what it is you heard, what that speaker had to say. What a great goal. Well, that's a huge takeaway for me. Alex, I really appreciate you joining us today and
Been
sharing
great.
your wisdom. And I think people listening or watching this are going to walk away with some serious skills. What's the best way for people to be in touch with you?
My website is gainyourvoice.com, or the abridged version is just the GYV for Gain Your Voice. So gyv.com.au. That's got the .au for Australia, but the Gain Your Voice is just .com. They'll both take you to the same place, and you can reach out via the contact form over there, or look me up on LinkedIn. I try to post regularly, and there'll often be these sorts of snippets from behind the scenes. That little kid who came over to me with the feedback is going to make his way into a post shortly. Not sure exactly how, but it's the type of thing that, gives me a bit of insight into the way people hear things and the way they react. So I like to share a lot of that sort of behind the scenes sort of feeling in the LinkedIn post. So that's where you could learn a lot over there.
Alex, thank you very much. We couldn't have done this episode of Masterful Leaders without you.
Thank you. Thank you for the platform. It's been a wonderful opportunity to share. Thank you.
This is Masterful Leaders. Win at work, thrive at home, lead your life.
On Masterful Leaders, we believe true success is built across every part of life, not just business. If this episode added value to you, subscribe, share it with someone you care about, and join us next time as we continue building the full package.